In 2021, an investor named Char bought a rental property with $48,000 down. 4 years later, that $48,000 has grown into over $250,000 using some really smart real estate strategies, including one called the 1031 tax-free exchange. In this episode, I have a conversation with Char to show you all the details of her real estate deals and to explain how she did it. Let's get started. Hey, Char, I can't wait to jump into your deal to talk about how you saved on taxes by selling your rental property. But before I jump into that, I know you pretty well because I've known you in rental property mastery in our community, but I'd like everybody else to get to know you a little bit better and kind of the context of where you live, where you invest, and can you just tell in kind of what your real estate business looks like? So you can tell a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. Well, let's see. I started out as a part-time real estate investor in 2018. I had a W-2 corporate job, coincidentally in corporate real estate. That's a different discussion. But I started by renting our family home. And when we left Kansas City, and we moved to Seattle. So this is where we are right now. My husband moved to another job that was out here. And so I am now doing investing from here. But at the time, my job was remote, so I could go with him when he moved. And then I guess for the next about 5 years, I was doing part-time real estate with that W-2 going on. It was very busy. So I think through that time, I picked up another 3 houses and ended up selling the family home in Kansas City. And in, I think it was 22, 23, went into short-term rentals in Phoenix. But I had really envisioned myself with a passive approach to investing. And I liked the buy and holds, and that's what I had been doing. When I went to short-term rentals in Phoenix, I learned a little bit about myself, and I really didn't want to do work so much. I very much was interested in passive. So I held that for about a year, and I did sell it. So what also kind of played out at that time is the stars aligned in my family business and our work. And I got to leave my W-2 and become a full-time investor last year, 2024. So
Exciting. Yes.
That was very exciting. It was obviously something I've been working towards. So that allowed me to do 2 things. One, focus on passive buy and hold portfolio investing, and also started a more active business doing flipping and wholesaling last year. So I started my first and sold my first flip last year. So it's coming along, and I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, I love it's been fun to see your journey, and just for people to know who want to hear more background about that. Before this call, I was looking to see when did I interviewed Char on the podcast? When was that? I felt like it was a couple of years ago, but it was back in 2021. So I'll have a link to that in the show notes as well. You can kind of hear more details about the background. But what I love about your journey, there's several different threads there, but you jumped into from the passive part-time world, which a lot of people are in, to doing this full time. You have a real estate license. You also are flipping properties in Washington where the prices are pretty high. And then you have this long distance business as well that has been in Kansas City and also in Tennessee. Is that right? And
that's right. Yeah.
Is that
was the
Metro?
market I focused on. Mm-hmm.
Got it. Metro, is that Metro Nashville basically is where you invest, or is it farther away?
It's farther away. It's about 30 minutes outside of Nashville. It's called Clarksville.
Got it. Okay. So those are if we had to give people a picture, you've got your Seattle area market, which you do business in. You actually have a rental there too, which we'll talk about. But then you have your long distance market that you've sort of settled into of Kansas City plus Clarksville, Tennessee. And those are your more passive rental properties. And so that brings us up to our current story. And actually, right when we had our last conversation back in 2021, you bought a particular property in Clarksville, Tennessee, a single family house. So I'm wondering if let's just tell that story. Maybe you could tell, how you found it, and then let's talk the numbers in that deal as well.
Sure. I'd start with the fact that, it's out of state for me, right? It's Seattle. I live in Seattle. It's in Tennessee. Obviously, I'm trying to stretch my dollar, trying to get a little bit more bang for the buck. by buying out there, but it does a couple of things. One, it makes me reliant on the local team there that I've built. So I met an investor agent and property management company and so on, and that's how I found the house. They helped me buy the others also, by the way, but because there's an out-of-state focus and I'm very heavily reliant on that team, they were sort of unusual because the agent is part of the property management company, and so I had a consistency across the purchase and property management. And I guess I can talk about that more later, but that helped me get to a place where I was confident enough to do this in the first place and to continue to do it.
I actually like that. I know some people like to have separate agent and property manager, but I've found the same thing. Like I like to go through my property managers if they're also agents to buy properties because ultimately I rely on that property manager more than any
Yeah.
other team members. So I think
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think it's especially when you're long distance, you have to have that team on the ground. I'm glad you started with that because the property
Yeah.
itself is one thing, but if you don't have a team to help you do the due diligence, to manage it, to tell you neighborhood by neighborhood what this looks like, I mean you could be sort of lost without that.
Exactly. Yes. So, as far as the house, they brought me this deal. It is a single family house. I did end up buying it in June of 2021. I bought it for 192,000, and I put a down payment down on it of 48,000, so just under 50. I did put a little bit of capital dollars in it to get it up to speed initially, maybe 10-ish, 12-ish, somewhere in there. But I got a 30-year fixed mortgage on it, and it was during the nice years of 2 and 3%. So I had a 3.25% interest rate, and 30-year conventional mortgage.
Got it. Do you remember at the time, and I know there's a lot of depth we could go into this on this, but what attracted you about this property? What was the location like? What was the property itself like? What was something that told you this is something I
Yeah.
want to invest $50,000 in long distance?
Yeah. So I was pretty focused on ensuring that anything I bought was in my buy box, and this was squarely in the center. So I felt pretty confident that things like its size, its age, it was 1991, I think. So I didn't want to worry about maintenance, so it was a little bit newer. It was in a place that was high demand, where near a neighborhood with good schools and all the check marks of what would be good draw, good demand signals, and it's really worked out during the time that I've had it. It has met all the goals, and it's been a really good property for me.
Yeah, so I like it. You started with the buy box, the location first,
Hmm.
and then it meets those criteria of being in demand, the property's low maintenance, and then you run the numbers on it. And at that point, we've fast forwarded to 2025. I know that there's new challenges with interest rates and things like that, but at that point, if you put $50,000 down and got a mortgage, was there cash flow day one, or did you have to kind of
Yes.
grow into that? How did that look?
Yeah, cash flow day one. I was just under $200 a door. It was my goal, so we hit that rather right on the money. Also, so it just felt right. It was good. It was a good
Yeah.
property.
Do you remember what it rented for at the time?
1250.
1250. Cool. And did that go up over time? So you owned it
Oh,
from
it did.
2021 to 2025. What did the rent growth look like during that? I mean, that was a growth time period and unusually high growth period.
Yeah, it went up to 1450 was the high end.
Got it. So cash flow was good to start. It
Very.
increased. That's kind of the recipe of a good deal. Start at a good
Yeah,
location, lock in your loan, get some cash flow today, let it grow over time. So had all the kind of check marks you said for a good deal. And
exactly.
all right. So I think, is there anything else you would say about the deal before we fast forward to later on when you
Mhm.
actually decided to sell it?
No, I think maybe the important point is that I walked in feeling pretty good about it.
Mm.
I
Got it.
liked it.
Yeah. All right. So we'll fast forward this. You collect rent, your property manager. Did you have one tenant the whole time, or did you have to turn it over a little bit?
Turned it over a couple of times.
Got it.
Yep.
All right. So you come to 2025 and you ended up selling it. But like talk to me about that decision. This is something as I talk to so many landlords and also have to reflect on my own properties. I'm always thinking about like what is the criteria when I sell, when I don't sell? Like what was the situation for you that ultimately led to actually selling the property?
Yeah. So, like I said, I liked the property. I expected to keep it for a period of time. I don't know, years. But my property manager approached me one day and said that the tenant was inquiring as to whether the owner might be interested in selling to them. And it really was out of the clear blue sky. I don't know why I never considered the idea that that could happen, but I hadn't. And it was, I found it a really kind of a tough decision. That's how much I guess I liked it. And it met my personal need. I needed passivity. I needed to not worry, and I felt like, oh, this is a bump in the road. Maybe this isn't the way to go. Um, at the time, we'd had mortgage pay down. If I were going to talk numbers, it was making, $450 a month cash flow, right? More than doubled the initial. And I took a beat. And had to think about it before I answered. And the truth was, the reality of the market was slowing down. It was the post-COVID years. The heyday had kind of passed. It was slowing down. It wasn't making the same appreciation, and rent increases were slowing down. They were getting near flat last year, right? So it felt like maybe it was a good time. Maybe we could consider it. And what pushed it over the top was the agent came back with a CMA, a competitive market analysis, that showed a possible sale price that was a really nice equity number. And that's when it locked in. Yeah, I think we're going to try this.
Got it. What did she tell you or he tell you that the market value was before you made that decision?
275.
Okay. So you bought it 192, had about 12,000 in it. So maybe can we call that 205 is what your investment was up front total in the property purchase price
Yeah,
plus somewhere in there?
yeah, you could. Yeah,
Okay. So
call it
maybe
10 in. Yeah, 192 plus 10.
so 202. So over an $80,000 spread there that you're looking at. And so,
Right.
and I want to
Right.
speculate on this, to push back if I'm not right on this, but the other thing that maybe went into that decision is that if you're in the growth mode of your real estate investing career, like turning over $80,000 in equity to go do another deal sometimes can compound your growth. That's another idea. I don't know if I don't know if that crossed your mind too, but I see that as a, I've turned some properties over too every once in a while and just kept that money going. So
Yeah.
is that crossing your mind?
Yeah. So if you think of that as the tenant, inquiry, and then our thinking processes around it, go to the decision itself. What we decided is that we have to go to our strategic goals, the kind of big picture reason that we are doing this, to really make the decision. And that is, we are still in growth mode. We are still in the growth phase of our investing journey. And we want to add more properties to scale up. That equity would help us put a nice down payment down on something maybe even bigger, go duplex, like from one door to two doors, or
Yep.
or more. Also the realization, and maybe I'm jumping ahead here, but the realization that I'm going to have to pay taxes if we sell this meant we were going to not make as much if we sold it outright. And it sort of opened the door to the idea that there's another way, and that is a 1031 exchange that would help us dodge the tax and be able to put it toward the next thing.
Yep. Yeah, I asked that question because I know you're a very strategic thinker and you're kind of thinking, playing the chess here. So I was assuming that was the case. And it's also, I'll add this too. Like I've sold a lot of properties to tenants just like this, and it's a feel good it's a feel good
Yeah.
moment. Turning a tenant, renter into a homeowner is a really
Yeah.
cool thing. So I think I always tell people the exit strategy of many of my rental properties is to sell it to my tenant. Like
Yeah.
I think it makes a lot of sense. And I'm curious in your case, because did you have any commission savings because you went directly to the tenant as opposed to having to put it on the
Absolutely.
open market?
Absolutely. Yeah.
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 I think everybody's in this for that, to contribute to that game to some degree, right? It is, in effect, it's a win-win-win, right? I win, the tenant wins, and the agent sees the recurring, the business and the agent and the property management. So, it's a very good moment in the investing journey. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. All right. So we got, I wanted to go into the decision because I think people sit on properties and I'm a buy and hold person. I know you are too, but sometimes selling makes sense, but then we got to think strategically about it. So let's talk about the numbers. You bought the property all in about 202, you had a loan about almost $50,000 down. So that it kind of cooking along, everything's pretty good there. And then you sell it. Let's talk about the, the potential tax liability. And we're not going to get into all the details because we'd have to whiteboard this and all that, but I just want to give people rough numbers to understand, because I've had people I talked to who said, I want to do a 1031 exchange and save money on taxes. And when I look at the gain they had, I'm like, well, is that really worth the squeeze? You're doing all this effort, and we're going to talk about the effort you have to go into on a 1031. So maybe could you just paint a picture of sales price, and then what you were thinking when you decided to do, not to do it, to sell it outright, but actually to do what's called a 1031. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, from a numbers perspective, it gets a little complicated. I had to go to a calculator that was designed for 1031 ultimately. So I don't know that I can speak to all the ins and outs of all of that, but I will tell you that what it seemed to estimate for us, and I would suggest an online calculator to somebody, that we could save up to $21,000 if we did a 1031 exchange, and that's real money for us. So we sold it for $275, and that we ended up with a net proceed of $123,000.
Got it. All right, 123,000. So the net proceeds are the amount of cash you get to have available to do the next thing.
Exactly.
Potential savings of about 21,000. And all right, so talk me through the process of what a 1031 exchange is. I'll give just the context that 1031 is a section of the tax code that allows you to go through a formal process. You got to follow the rules here. But if you follow the rules, instead of putting the money in the bank and paying taxes on it, you can basically trade your money to the next property. So I'll let you talk about details from there, but that's the context of what a 1031 means.
Sure. It's important to know that I didn't know a 1031 from a 482, right? So I had to do a little bit of research. And what I found is that the 1031 exchange, they say, is the single biggest advantage of real estate investors and what they have over other kinds of investors, because of the ability to defer taxes. And rolling it over to the next sale is a good way to build wealth, and not giving it to Uncle Sam. So in order to do that 1031 exchange, I learned that I needed to engage something called a qualified intermediary, which is a formal person, an agent that you can hire. It's a business that you can hire someone to do for you, represent you as a QI, they call it. You pay them a fee, and they become effectively the recipient of the proceeds when you close on your sale, and that money goes to them into a trust account, and that trust account is held for you until you buy your new replacement property, and then they will handle the wiring of that money to your closing on that second, what they call replacement property.
So I want to ask questions about the process and the rules, but the thing that just struck me as you said that they hold your money is somebody's holding 182,000 or whatever that whatever that amount of money was. 123 yeah. Is like, they got six figures of my money sitting in an account. Like, yes. Who is this person? Are they qualified? Like, how did you research this person who's holding 123,000 of your money?
Yeah. So, also part of the research process, right? I went to a local RIA, and as luck would have it, there was a 1031 person there speaking.
Hmm.
And it happened to be someone local who has a local office here. And I got to ask all the questions. I would recommend doing that very thing. Whomever you hire, that it would be someone you can ask, and that they are freely sharing all the information about how it works, what they do, how they're legally qualified, what makes them able to act on your behalf. But the word qualified intermediary is about them being your legal representative. So it is very formal. You engage them through a formal contract and all of that sort of thing. But they do a good job of explaining how it works, and I felt confident that I understood how it was going to work.
Got it. Okay. So step one, find a qualified intermediary that you trust and
Mm-hmm.
you understand the process. Step two, there's some rules you have to follow. And this is probably the kind of the details that sometimes catch people with 1031 exchanges. Can you talk just about the rough rules that you have to follow in order to get the benefit of this tax deferral?
Yeah, there are time frames is what everybody talks about, right? There are specific required timelines that you have to meet, and I'll call them milestones, required milestones for a 1031 exchange. But basically, it's three different actions. The first one is you you have a clock that starts upon the closing of your sale. So here I just sold that house, and that is the day that the 1031 exchange clock starts on a 45-day window. And you get notification from your QI that says your clock has started, and you have to have your required the required delivery on your part is that you have to find a replacement property.
Or identify, if they use that term, you have to identify one or more
It,
replacement
it,
properties.
yeah. So the clock starts on what is a 45-day window called the identification period. So they give you your due date. And that identification period is about you locating the property that you're going to replace that sale with, and you have to formally identify it, literally write it down and submit it as this is the property I'm going to purchase by the date that they hand to you. And for me, it was January 9th. So that my 45-day window was into January. I also had the opportunity to ID more than one property should I feel the need. And you can ID up to three. So that
So
was
if one of them doesn't work out, maybe you can have a couple backups. I guess that one idea there that you
that's right.
don't
Yeah,
put all your eggs in one basket. Or I guess you could take $123,000 and you could put it all on one property, or you could split it up over two or three properties. Is the
exactly.
other idea?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So the day I closed on that deal and the clock started, I kind of started feeling a little bit of pressure, right? I got to get that next property identified. But, it's a month and a half to find another one in a market that's, pretty nice. So I went shopping, and unfortunately, the realities of the market started setting in. It was low inventory last year, right? End of last year, think about that. It was kind of a no-go. Every property that I looked at it just had an issue or what have you. Worse than that, interest rates were ticking up. You may recall this, 7%. They were bouncing up, bouncing back, bouncing up, and the tenants started getting nervous. They were concerned that if this interest rate kept going, they were locked in a contract for a price that they might not be able to pay for if interest rates keep going up. And they started putting a lot of pressure on, can we just close? Can we just close? And so I said, okay. We went ahead and closed on November 25th, which started my clock even sooner. So that's what the January 9th date was based on. But we did the close. We did the same price, and the 123,000 went to the QI, the qualified intermediary. So it's sitting in a trust account. So I now have 45 days to keep doing what I was doing, but only now with an earnest. So the shopping process took a while. I found something, it didn't work out. I found another something, it didn't work out, and time is eating away. And I got really close. I got within a week of that time frame, and I was kind of concerned. So I would say, if somebody wants to do this, that you'd have a really good grip on what it is you want to buy before you get down this road. But I identified 2 properties that were actually not in that market because I was feeling concerned, and even one within my own market while I was doing a flip. But it was a rental property that I was thinking of flipping. So I put all 3 on there. By the time that week rolled around, the 2 they were in Kansas City actually, both went pending before I could get to them. So it left me with my one Washington property, which I did get under contract.
Got it.
Yeah.
Was that, and how did you find that one? Was it just looking on the MLS, Zillow, somewhere, or did you find it through off-market marketing that you were already doing?
That was actually a referral. It was someone that I knew through my church.
Oh, cool. All right.
Yeah.
Good old
Yeah.
referrals. There we go.
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
So I want to get into the numbers of this new deal and kind of unpack that, but I do want to pause on this whole stress of identifying a property. I've only done one 1031 exchange, by the way. So this has not been a common process for me. I've sold a lot of properties, but I've either, just sold them and paid taxes, or in one case I had a really big gain. And I'd heard a lot about this from other people just talking and how stressful it can be. And somebody had recommended to me that if at all possible, it's not always possible, if at all possible, identify a property even before you sell the property,
Yeah.
and maybe either get an option on it, like pay the seller some money, enough money so that they're willing to wait 6 months or so, or get a contract on it. And so I had that idea in my head, just having heard about that. And so what we did was we bought a new construction property, and we negotiated with the builder we gave them a deposit, gave the builder a deposit, and then there was going to be a period of time for the builder to build it, 2 or 3 months. So that was one way we were able to work around that, specifically with new construction, was getting it under contract. But I've also heard, just to throw it out there for people listening here, is that if you can be creative and figure out a way to go hunting for a property even before you sell your rental, and then get it under contract somehow, or have a pipeline at a minimum of deals coming in. I've seen people, you ended up doing pretty well on your deal, but I've also seen people who get this so rushed to the last minute that they just buy a deal that's not a great deal, and now they're stuck with a bad deal just because they wanted to save money on taxes. So
I can totally see that happening. Yeah. It's quite the dance though, right? Because you have to close on the first one to have the money to buy the next one.
Yeah.
So the timing is a challenge. I can see how that could happen to someone, but there's a lesson learned at the end of this. I'll talk about relative to timing, but all true. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So you did well though. You got the property identified. Let's talk about this property in Washington State. And can you talk about what kind of property it was, and then let's talk about the numbers about what you bought it for.
Yes. So it was a gentleman's rental house that he had owned for quite a while, actually. It got a little, I'm going to call it tired. It had some room for improvement in both the actual renovation opportunity. So could have been a flip, or I keep it and as a rental and hold on to it as a rental for a while and then improve it maybe when leases expire and that kind of thing. Right. So there were options. I had options around it. The fact that we did this forced one option, and that was keep it as a rental, because I now need to keep it for a year for those tax reasons, for me to continue to have the tax benefit of putting that 1031 money in there and not have a short-term capital gains tax now kick in because I turned around and sold it or flipped it. I now for sure have to hold on to it for a year.
And by the way, just as I hear you talk about these tax issues, you're having a conversation with a CPA and your tax advisor as you do
Yes,
all this too. We didn't mention that
always.
earlier, but this is one of those that you don't want to DIY a 1031 exchange.
No.
Having your CPA tax attorney with you is like it has to be next to you. You have to have them along for the ride because they're giving you lots and lots of helpful information.
Yeah, that's an important point. In the research process, as I started this thing, the 1031 idea kicks in, and I said, I don't know 1031 from whatever I said, 482. So research started with, is this even a good idea for me personally in my financial situation? And so that's why I went to a CPA. So I went to our CPA and floated the idea, and he also knows my attorney. So between them, we all came to, yeah, we can go ahead and proceed with this.
Yeah, important point there. So,
Yes,
you identified that you need to keep it for a year. Did you bought this one for 300,000? Is that right? This property in Washington.
that's right. Yeah,
Okay, got it. So just so people see the numbers, you sold the other one for 275 or 285. I'm trying to remember
275.
275, and then this
Mm-hmm.
one was 300. So matching up those prices is also one of the in your equities to make sure you buy it. You can't buy a property that's cheaper or your equity. How do I explain this? Typically, if the property is cheaper than the property you sold, or the properties you buy are cheaper, there could still be a tax on that if you don't you have to either go the same or higher value.
That's right.
Is what you understand it as well?
Yes, yes. And so the the property was actually owned free and clear, so it presented an opportunity of a different sort as well. So between the fact that it cost more than the value I was of the proceeds that I was bringing to put down, that met that requirement. But it still had a balance of 178,000 due on it, which I negotiated with the gentleman to carry. So it became a seller finance deal for the rest of it. And interestingly, it also he was agreeable to a substitution of collateral, substitution of security clause that would allow me to move that security at some point should we ever come to that decision. So
Now we're getting all the lettuce and tomatoes. We're having a lot of fun now.
that's
People are like,
exactly right.
what did Char just say? She just talked about something. But this is
Yeah,
cool. So it started with a one tool that we have in our toolbox, the 1031 exchange. You found a property, you identified it, you negotiated with the seller, and you knew enough to say, hey, he's got equity. Like let me make an offer instead of me having to go to the bank. Let me make an offer to him. I'll give him a down payment of 178 or how much 124,000, and then he could carry the balance as a seller financing note. Essentially, he became your bank, and
yeah,
instead of you giving him that money up front, he's allowing you to make payments to you over time. And that's awesome. Like, and
yeah.
particularly, do you remember the terms of that? What the actual interest rates and monthly payment, or the interest rate and how long it was, that kind of thing?
Yeah, yeah. So it's a total of 178. It is going to balloon in 10 years, and the interest rate is 4.5%, and it is principal and interest versus what could have been interest only. We went principal and interest. So there you have it.
Yeah, it's 889 a month, and you can pay
899. Yeah.
899. You can pay him for 10 years at 4.5% interest. And then the other thing, we'll just plant the seed. Maybe I'll have you back for another episode where we talk about substitution security. But there's this idea that if you were to sell the property, that you don't have to pay him off necessarily. You can actually
That's right.
transfer this seller financing mortgage to another property and keep the terms. That's
That's
pretty
right.
cool.
That's right.
It's
That
another.
is a
You've done
huge
this.
benefit.
You've
Yeah.
done this twice now, right? You've had another deal where you did
It's
it
my
as
second
well.
one. Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah, look at you. You're
Yes.
negotiating pro here.
Well, let's not get carried away, but it is addictive. I really am looking forward to trying it again. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, love it. Sometimes it just knowing that it's possible. So if somebody hears this, they're like, "Wow, substitution security. I should offer that next time I try to get seller
Hmm.
financing." So we'll plant that
Yeah.
seed with everybody. But us go back to talking about this deal. So you kept it as a rental. You bought it for 300. You've got payments of 899. What's the rental look like now? What if you had to kind of give a state of the rental? Like what do you have rent? What kind of rent do you have coming in? Are you managing it yourself? Like what's the situation look like now?
Yes. I guess I'll start with the rent's gonna commence April 1st at 1,800. So there's a good bit of difference there. But the fun part is in the ARV. If it were to be flipped and sold, the market value and an after repair value is about 450,000.
There we go.
Yeah.
And did you have to do work to add value to that, or was it just you got a good deal on the price up front?
I would have to do a little bit of work. I mean, to make it. I would want to improve a few things, but not a great deal. So
Got it. You just made a good purchase, good location,
it was a
good
good purchase.
good negotiation. And so let's talk about going forward. I mean, you have a property that rents for 1,800. Your payment's 899, so you have some space in there to pay your bills and pay your expenses and still have some cash flow. But what's it look like on this whole situation? You started with a property in Clarksville with a $50,000 down payment. You've grown that. You grew that to some equity over 120,000 bucks that you used in a 1031 exchange to buy this one. Now you've got that original 120, some 124 plus another 150 or so in equity. So you've really turned that $50,000 into a big chunk of equity. Like what now? Like what are you thinking about?
As far as where to take that next,
Yeah,
the
like yeah. Do you keep this property for the next 10 years? Do you want to sell it? Like I'm just curious what you're thinking strategically from here.
well, I'll remind you, I'm in the growth phase of my investing journey, and that would mean I'm looking for the next opportunity. Might be a deal, might be, I recently got into lending money as a private lender, so maybe it looks like that. But hoping to build up to maybe a little bit more scale in my portfolio of properties. In other words, the I have a lot of single family home experience, and I might like to start looking at small multifamily. So I think that's where I'm going next.
Got it. And you have
But
time to
if we
think
put
about it.
it, I'm sorry.
You have time to think about that as well.
Yeah. Well, if we put it all together, I'm sitting at about what 272 at the end of the day that is available here. So it really has been a quite the couple of deals, and I might have shaved a couple of years off my life trying to make the deal happen.
A little bit of stress. Yeah, I
Yes,
get it.
exactly. Yeah, making it happen is it would have been bad had it all been for naught, but it,
Yeah.
it worked out.
Yeah, looking from the outside in, I think it's so cool because you've used a lot of different tools. You've used the tool of just analyzing your market, having a buy box, and picking a good solid property. I mean, so you benefited from that. You benefited from that
Hmm.
knowledge that you built. You benefited from building a team and having relationships on the ground in Clarksville. You benefited from listening to your tenant and just helping a tenant become a homeowner. That was another tool in your toolbox. And then, of course, the 1031 that we've talked all about. And if you would have paid taxes on that $20,000, I think about like if you think about the compounding of that 20,000 bucks over the next 10 years, if you grow that money at 10% interest, which you'll probably do better, or 10% return, you'll do better than that. I think you could double that money in 14 years. Like, so the 20,000 will turn into 40,000 and the 40,000 will turn into 80,000 bucks. So it's not just you would have lost 20,000 bucks, you would have lost 80,000 or 100,000 bucks
Yeah,
that you
yeah,
could have used for your financial independence 10, 15 years from now. So that's huge. Like that, what
yeah.
a huge deal to put that together. And then on your next deal, just your deal acquisition skills of identifying another property, of negotiating with the seller, understanding seller financing, and adding all the lettuce and tomatoes of different terms and things. And now you're set up in a place where you have 270,000 in equity on this one kind of property, and it could become a multifamily property that maybe has even more equity and or cash flow. And it's just such a good step-by-step shows what the potential of your knowledge when you build your knowledge as a real estate investor. So I appreciate you sharing it and being willing to go into the details of how it works.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it as well. I've always appreciated other people sharing when they do things like this. So hopefully we can help someone else out there.
Absolutely. So would you give I want to give you a chance to say anything else about the deal. Is there anything we didn't cover? Is there any other commentary you would make that would be helpful for people just to think about this transformation you went through?
Yes, I will tell you that there is a lesson learned in what I believe I would do differently. There are other tools out there. There's not just the 1031 exchange that I described here. What I learned is that there's something called a 1031 reverse exchange. And that one will be the one I dig into next. As I understand it, it is about finding the property you want to buy first, and then you sell your own property. That is how it's more complicated and apparently a little bit more costly. So it'd be maybe important to dig into that a little bit more for anybody to see what they're signing up for. But I believe that, if it's a little bit more costly, I would definitely prefer to do something like that. If it's a lot more, I don't know, we'll see. But I think that's what I would do differently.
And the main benefit, if I understand it, is that you would avoid the issue of having that 45-day identification window where you have to be right on the clock. And even if it cost you a couple $1,000 extra, if you could find a better deal that made an extra $10,000, for example, because you were patient,
yeah,
I could see how you could make that up pretty easily, right?
Yeah. There's also, just a couple $1,000. I heard the phrase thrown around lately about the return on brain damage.
That's from our friend Arion Shihai.
Yes,
in Houston. Yes, so you're saying that return on brain damage would be better on doing a reverse 1031?
I think so. Yeah, it might be just worth it right off the bat. Yeah. So.
I agree. Yeah. So you keep building on your knowledge. And so doing a reverse 1031 where you go ahead and buy the property ahead of time and then sell your old property, or doing what the other ideas we talked about. It's a little harder, but if you can get an option on a property or negotiate some kind of lease option or something, basically you just want to tie the property up ahead of time because it's such a difficult process going through that timeline. So I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. If the lease option became an option, then you wouldn't need to go through the reverse hoops. But I think it depends on what you're able to find.
Yeah. But sometimes the seller, they want their cash right now. So if they said, I'll
right.
give you a good deal, but like you have to buy it 15 days from now or 30 days from now, then you could use the reverse 1031 to buy it, come up with the money that way. And so that's a whole other episode. It's something I need to learn more about as well. But
lots of options though, right? It's always, that's the fun part of investing, I think.
Yeah. Real estate investing is business in general. The thing I love about it is you can take an idea you learn in a podcast or ideas, you can internalize them, you can study them, and then they turn into money. Like they become real life money. Like that's pretty incredible. Like that's high return.
Yes. All right.
Well, Char, thank you for your time. I want to give you a chance to let people connect with you if they want to find what you're up to. I know you're buying properties in Washington still. You're buying properties out of state. You're also doing deals. So tell everybody kind of what you're looking for. And then also I'll have links to everything you say in our show notes so that people can connect with you there too.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So you can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. And I have a website at chartovarrealestate.com.
Got it. All right. I'll have links to all that. And thanks again, Char. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you.
In this episode, we talked about how Char saved $21,000 by doing a 1031 exchange. But we didn't talk about how to figure out how much taxes you would pay on your rental properties if you were to sell them. So in my next video, I go in depth to show you a rental property I actually sold and show you how much tax I paid. And then I give you a free spreadsheet that I used on my property that you can use on yours to figure out how much tax you would pay by selling a property. If you're watching on YouTube, you can click on the thumbnail above me here, or you can click on the link in the YouTube or the podcast description below. Thanks for watching or listening. I'll see you in the next episode.